We've become terrified of boredom. Absolutely terrified. Think about the last time you had to wait somewhere, even just for a few minutes. A doctor's office, a line at the grocery store, a red light that seemed to last forever. What did you do? If you're like most people, your hand immediately reached for your phone. You scrolled through social media, checked your email, opened an app, any app, just to fill that tiny gap of nothingness. Because boredom, we've learned, is something to be avoided at all costs. It's uncomfortable, it's wasteful, it's a problem that needs an immediate solution. But here's what nobody's telling you. In our desperate attempt to escape boredom, we're actually starving our minds of exactly what they need to grow. Those empty, unstimulated moments that feel so uncomfortable, so unproductive, so utterly pointless, they're not wasted time. They're essential. They're when your brain actually does some of its most important work. And by filling every single second with content, entertainment, and distraction, we're robbing ourselves of the mental space where creativity lives, where problems get solved, where we actually figure out who we are and what we think. Our brains weren't designed for constant stimulation. For most of human history, people spent huge portions of their days doing repetitive, mundane tasks that required minimal mental engagement. Walking long distances, tending crops, sitting by fires, staring at horizons. And during those stretches of what we'd now call boredom, their minds wandered. They daydreamed. They processed experiences. They made unexpected connections between ideas. They invented things. They created stories. They had revelations about their lives and the world around them. The greatest thinkers, artists, and innovators throughout history didn't have their best ideas while consuming content or staying busy. Newton wasn't scrolling through his phone when the apple fell. Archimedes wasn't watching videos in the bathtub. Einstein did some of his most profound thinking during long, aimless walks. They had something we've almost completely lost: unstructured time where their minds had nothing specific to do and nowhere particular to go. And in that spaciousness, in that boredom, brilliance emerged. Now we've engineered boredom almost completely out of existence. We wake up and immediately check our phones. We listen to podcasts while we shower. We scroll through social media while we eat. We watch shows while we exercise. We fill commutes with music, audiobooks, calls. We can't even sit on the toilet without entertainment. Every possible moment of potential emptiness has been colonized by content. And we think this is progress. We think this is efficiency. We think we're maximizing our time. But what we're actually doing is keeping our minds in a constant state of input with no time for processing. Imagine trying to have a conversation where the other person never stops talking, never pauses, never gives you a chance to think about what they've said or formulate your own thoughts. That's what we're doing to our own brains. We're flooding them with information, stimulation, and entertainment without ever giving them the silence they need to make sense of any of it. Your mind needs empty space the way your lungs need to exhale. You can't just keep breathing in. At some point, you have to release, to empty out, to create room for the next breath. Mental consumption works the same way. You can't just keep taking in information, opinions, images, and sounds without ever creating space for your own thoughts to form. Boredom is the exhale. It's the emptying out. It's the pause that makes everything else meaningful. When you're bored, really bored, with nothing to distract you and no escape route available, something interesting starts to happen. At first, it's uncomfortable. Your mind doesn't know what to do with itself. You feel restless, anxious, like you should be doing something, anything. You might feel guilty, like you're wasting precious time. This discomfort is exactly why we reach for our phones so quickly. We've lost our tolerance for it, but if you can sit with that discomfort, if you can resist the urge to fill the space, your mind begins to do what it's designed to do. It starts to wander. And mind wandering, despite its reputation as a sign of distraction or lack of focus, is actually a highly sophisticated cognitive process. It's when your brain shifts into what neuroscientists call the default mode network, a state where different regions of your brain start communicating in ways they don't during focused tasks. This is when you process memories, make sense of experiences, and integrate new information with what you already know. This is when you make unexpected connections between seemingly unrelated ideas. This is when you stumble upon solutions to problems you weren't even consciously thinking about. This is when you have those sudden insights, those aha moments that seem to come from nowhere, but actually come from your brain finally having the space to work through things in the background. Boredom is also where you actually meet yourself. When there's nothing external to focus on, you're left with your own thoughts, feelings, and inner landscape. And yes, that can be uncomfortable, especially if you've been avoiding difficult emotions or unresolved questions. But that discomfort is information. It's your mind trying to tell you something important. Maybe you're unhappy in your job. Maybe a relationship isn't working. Maybe you're living according to someone else's values instead of your own. These truths don't emerge when you're constantly distracted. They surface in the quiet moments, the boring moments, when there's nowhere left to hide from yourself. Constant stimulation lets us avoid this self-confrontation. It's a form of numbing, a way to stay perpetually busy enough that we never have to sit with uncomfortable realizations or difficult questions. We can scroll through other people's lives instead of examining our own. We can consume other people's thoughts instead of developing our own. We can stay so occupied that we never have to face the possibility that something needs to change. And then there's creativity. Real creativity, the kind that produces original ideas rather than just remixing existing ones, requires mental space. It requires periods of apparent inactivity where your mind can play with possibilities, explore strange tangents, and stumble into unexpected territory. When you're constantly consuming content created by others, you're filling your mental space with their ideas, their perspectives, their aesthetic. There's no room left for your own voice to emerge. Artists and writers have always known this. They talk about the importance of staring into space, of taking long walks, of creating conditions for boredom, not because they're lazy, but because they understand that creativity doesn't happen on command. It happens in the margins, in the spaces between focused work, when the mind is allowed to drift without agenda or destination. The most original ideas often come not when you're trying hard to think of them, but when you're doing something mundane and your mind is free to wander. Children understand this instinctively. Watch a kid who's bored, really bored, with no screens available. After the initial whining and restlessness, something magical happens. They start inventing games. They create elaborate fantasy worlds. They turn cardboard boxes into spaceships and sticks into magic wands. Boredom is the mother of imagination. But we're raising a generation of kids who never experience true boredom, and we're wondering why they seem less creative, less able to entertain themselves, less capable of independent thought. The same principle applies to adults. When was the last time you had an original thought? Not an opinion you absorbed from someone else, not a reaction to content you consumed, but an actual original thought that emerged from your own mind, grappling with your own experience. For many of us, it's been a long time, not because we're less intelligent or less creative than we used to be, but because we've eliminated the conditions that allow original thinking to occur. Reclaiming boredom doesn't mean you have to sit in an empty room staring at walls, though honestly, trying that occasionally might be more valuable than you think. It means creating pockets of unstimulated time in your day. It means taking a walk without headphones. It means eating a meal without scrolling. It means sitting in a waiting room without immediately reaching for your phone. It means letting yourself be bored in the car, in line, in those little gaps between activities. At first, this will feel nearly impossible. You'll feel anxious, restless, like you're missing out on something important. Your hand will reach for your phone automatically. You'll have to consciously stop yourself again and again. This is normal. You're breaking an addiction because that's what constant stimulation has become. Your brain has been trained to expect a dopamine hit every few seconds, and now you're asking it to be okay with nothing. It's going to protest. But if you persist, something shifts. The discomfort becomes more tolerable. Your mind starts to relax into the space. You begin to notice things you've been missing, thoughts you've been ignoring, parts of yourself you've been too distracted to hear. You might feel more creative. You might solve problems that have been nagging at you. You might have clarity about decisions you need to make. You might just feel more like yourself, more grounded, more present in your own life. Boredom isn't the enemy of a meaningful life. Constant distraction is. Boredom is actually the soil in which insight grows, the canvas on which creativity paints, the silence in which your authentic voice can finally be heard. Your mind needs empty space the way a garden needs space between plants. Pack everything too tightly together, and nothing has room to grow. Leave some space, some emptiness, some apparent nothingness, and watch what flourishes in that fertile void. You don't need more content. You don't need more information. You don't need more stimulation or entertainment or distraction. What you need desperately is nothing. You need boredom. You need silence. You need space. Your mind has been trying to think, to process, to create, to help you understand yourself and your life, but it can't do any of that while you're constantly flooding it with noise. Give it permission to be bored. Give it the gift of empty time, and watch what happens when your mind finally has room to breathe, to wander, and to grow into everything it's capable of becoming.